An orphan arrives by mistake, and nothing in Avonlea will ever be the same. Meet Anne Shirley, red-haired, big-hearted, and bursting with imagination as she turns Green Gables into a home, finds a best friend, and faces her first school scandal. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Came by Mistake. Matthew Cuthbert lived with his sister Marilla on their farm on Prince Edward Island, Canada. Their house, called Green Gables, stood just outside the small village of Avonlea. Matthew was nearly 60 and had a long brown beard. Marilla was 5 years younger. They were both tall, thin, and dark-haired. Everyone in Avonlea knew the Cuthberts as quiet people who worked hard on their farm. One afternoon, Matthew drove his horse and cart to the station. "Has the 5:30 train come yet?" he asked the station master. "Yes," said the man. "And there's someone waiting for you, a little girl." "A girl," said Matthew in surprise. "I came for a boy. The children's home was sending us an orphan boy to help me with the farm. Maybe they didn't have any boys left, so they sent you a girl instead," said the man carelessly. "Here she is." Matthew turned and saw a small girl about 11 years old. She had long red hair in 2 plaits, a thin pale face full of freckles, and large grey-green eyes. Her brown hat was old, and her dress was too short for her. "Are you Mr. Cuthbert of Green Gables?" she asked in a sweet, excited voice. "I'm so glad to come and live with you and belong to you. I've never belonged to anyone before. The people at the home were kind, but it wasn't very exciting there, was it?" Matthew felt sorry for her. How could he tell her it was a mistake? He couldn't just leave her at the station, so he decided to take her home. Marilla would explain everything. To his surprise, Matthew enjoyed the ride home. He was a quiet man who didn't talk much, but today he didn't have to say a word. The little girl talked all the way. "My parents died when I was a baby," she said. "For 3 years, I've had to work for my food. I lived with 3 different families and looked after their children. I never had pretty clothes, but sometimes I imagine I'm wearing a blue dress, a big hat with flowers, and blue shoes. Then I'm happy. Do you ever imagine things, Mr. Cuthbert?" "Well, not often," said Matthew shyly. They passed some old apple trees covered with white blossoms. "Aren't they beautiful?" said the girl. "Oh dear, am I talking too much? Please tell me if I am." "You go on talking," said Matthew with a smile. "I like listening to you." When they reached Green Gables, Marilla came to the door. "Matthew, who's that? Where's the boy?" she cried. "The home made a mistake," said Matthew sadly. "They sent a girl." The child's face fell. She hid her face in her hands and began to cry. "You don't want me because I'm not a boy," she sobbed. Now, don't cry," said Marilla gently. "You don't understand. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me." "Well, you can stay tonight," said Marilla. "Now, what's your name?" The girl stopped crying. "Will you please call me Cordelia?" "Cordelia? Is that your name?" "No, but it's such a lovely name. My real name is Anne Shirley, but that sounds plain, doesn't it?" Marilla frowned. "The child has too much imagination," she thought. Later that night, after Anne went to bed, Marilla said, "She must go back tomorrow." "Marilla," said Matthew slowly, "don't you think she's a nice little thing?" "Matthew Cuthbert, do you mean you want to keep her?" asked Marilla sharply. Matthew looked uncomfortable. "She's clever and interesting." But we don't need a girl. Maybe she needs us, said Matthew quietly. She's had a hard life. She can help you in the house. I can find a boy from the village to help me on the farm. What do you say? Marilla was silent for a long time. Then she said softly, "All right. She can stay. I'll take care of her." Matthew smiled happily. "Be kind to her, Marilla. I think she needs a lot of love." Chapter 2. A New Life at Green Gables. The next morning, Marilla said, "Well, Anne, Matthew and I have decided to keep you if you try to be a good girl, of course." "Why, child, what's the matter?" Anne began to cry. "I'm crying because I'm so happy. Green Gables is the most beautiful place I've ever seen. People say I'm bad, but I'll try very hard to be good." "Oh, thank you, thank you. Stop crying now, child," said Marilla, a little crossly. "We're going to adopt you and send you to school after the summer holidays." Anne wiped her eyes. "Can I call you Aunt Marilla? I've never had a family before, and I'd love to have an aunt. We could pretend you're my mother's sister." "I couldn't," said Marilla firmly. "Don't you ever imagine things?" asked Anne in surprise. "No, I don't," said Marilla. "I do my work, look after Matthew, and go to church on Sundays. There's no time for imagining here. Remember that, Anne." Anne was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Marilla, do you think I'll find a best friend in Avonlea? Someone who really understands me? I've always dreamed of a true friend." "The Berries are our friends," said Marilla. "They have a daughter named Diana, the same age as you. But if you want to play with her, you must behave well. Mrs. Barry is very careful about Diana's friends." "Diana, what a lovely name," said Anne happily. "Her hair isn't red, is it? I hope not." She touched her red plaits sadly. "I hate my hair." "Diana has dark hair," said Marilla. "She's a good, clever girl. Try to be like her." When Anne met Diana, the two girls liked each other right away. They became best friends and spent many afternoons together, in the garden, by the river, or playing in the fields. In the mornings, Anne helped Marilla with housework, and later she talked with Matthew or played with Diana. Soon she loved every tree, flower, and animal at Green Gables. The Cuthberts had another friend, Mrs. Rachel Lynde, who always wanted to know everything happening in Avonlea. One day she came to visit Marilla, very curious about the orphan girl. "I was surprised to hear about the child," said Mrs. Lynde. "So you and Matthew really adopted her?" "I was surprised myself," said Marilla with a smile. "But she's a clever little thing, always singing, laughing, and dancing." Mrs. Lynde shook her head. "What a mistake, Marilla. You've never had children. How will you manage her?" At that moment, Anne ran in from the garden and stopped when she saw the visitor. Mrs. Lynde looked at her sharply. "Isn't she thin, Marilla? Look at those freckles and that hair, red as carrots." Anne's face turned bright red. She ran up to Mrs. Lynde and shouted, "I hate you! You're a mean, fat old woman." Then she rushed upstairs and slammed the door. "Oh dear," said Mrs. Lynde. "What a terrible child. You'll have trouble with her, Marilla." "You were rude to her, Rachel," Marilla said quietly. "Well," said Mrs. Lynde angrily, "it seems this orphan is more important to you than your friends. Goodbye, Marilla." Marilla went upstairs. Anne was lying on her bed, crying loudly. "You mustn't get angry like that," said Marilla. "Mrs. Lynde is my friend, and you were rude." She was rude first, said Anne. She said I was thin and freckled and had red hair. That was cruel. I understand, said Marilla, but you still must say you're sorry. I'll never say sorry, said Anne firmly. Then you'll stay in your room until you decide to, said Marilla. Anne stayed upstairs all the next day. The house was quiet without her. That evening, while Marilla worked in the garden, Matthew went up to her room. Anne sat by the window, looking sad. Anne, he said softly, why don't you say you're sorry? Then you can come down again, and we'll all be happy. I am sorry now, said Anne. I was very angry yesterday. But do you really think I should? Yes, please, said Matthew kindly. Don't tell Marilla I said so. Later that evening, Anne went with Marilla to Mrs. Lynde's house. Suddenly, Anne fell to her knees and cried, Oh, Mrs. Lynde, I'm so sorry. You'll have to imagine how sorry I am. I'm a very bad girl, but please forgive me. I'll be sad all my life if you don't. Marilla watched her, thinking. She doesn't look sorry at all. She looks excited. But Mrs. Lynde smiled kindly. Of course I forgive you, she said. Then turning to Marilla later, she added, Perhaps you're right to keep her. She's a strange little thing, but I think I like her. Chapter 3. Trouble at Avonlea School. When school started in September, Anne and Diana walked there and back together every day. What a beautiful day, said Anne happily as they crossed the fields. I'm so lucky to have you as my best friend, Diana. You are my best friend, aren't you? Of course, Anne, said Diana, holding her hand. And guess what? Today you'll meet Gilbert Blythe. He's 3 years older than us and very handsome. He's just come back from his holiday. Oh, boys, said Anne. I'm not interested in them. But when they reached the school, Anne looked at Gilbert. He was tall, with curly brown hair and a kind smile. He is handsome, Anne whispered. But why does he keep smiling at me? He doesn't even know me. That morning the classroom was quiet. The teacher, Mr. Phillips, was helping older students at the back. Anne stared out the window, dreaming about the trees with red and yellow leaves and the blue river. She didn't hear Gilbert whispering to her. He wanted her to notice him, but she didn't look up. Surprised, he reached out, pulled one of her red plaits, and whispered loudly, Carrots! Carrots! Anne jumped up, her face red with anger. You horrible boy! She shouted. I hate you! Then she hit Gilbert hard on the head with her book. Mr. Phillips turned and came to the front. Anne Shirley, why did you do that? He asked. Anne said nothing. It was my fault, Mr. Phillips, said Gilbert quickly. I was rude to her. But the teacher ignored him. I will not have bad behavior in my school, he said. Anne, go and stand in front of the class. Anne stood there for the rest of the day, her face pale and angry. I hate Mr. Phillips, she thought, and I'll never speak to Gilbert Blythe again. The next day, some children came back late from playing in a farmer's field. Anne ran into the classroom just after the teacher. You're late, Anne, said Mr. Phillips. You won't sit with Diana today. Since you enjoy being with the boys, you can sit with Gilbert this afternoon. Anne's face turned white. He can't mean that, she thought. Did you hear me, Anne? Asked Mr. Phillips. Yes, sir, she said quietly. She walked slowly to Gilbert's desk, sat down, and hid her face in her arms. This is the end, she thought. I wasn't the only one who was late, but he punished me by making me sit next to a boy, and that boy is Gilbert Blythe. The afternoon felt endless. When the day was over, Anne packed all her books, pens, and pencils. "What are you doing?" asked Diana. "I'm not coming back to school," said Anne firmly. "Oh, but Anne!" cried Diana. "Next week we're reading a new book, and on Monday we're playing a new game. You'll miss everything." "I'm sorry, Diana," said Anne softly, "but I'm not going back." That evening, Marilla hurried to Rachel Lynde's house. "Rachel, please help me. Anne says she won't go back to school. What should I do?" Mrs. Lynde smiled. She loved giving advice. "I've had 10 children, Marilla. Let her stay home for a while. She'll want to return soon. You'll see." So Anne stayed home. She saw Diana only in the evenings. She was a girl who felt deeply she hated Gilbert Blythe, but she loved Diana with all her heart. One evening, Marilla found Anne crying in the kitchen. "What's wrong, child?" she asked. "I love Diana so much," sobbed Anne. "I can't live without her, but one day she'll get married and I'll hate her husband. I can see her now in her long white dress, leaving me forever." Marilla turned away, trying not to laugh. What a funny, dramatic girl Anne was. "Oh, Anne Shirley, you and your imagination," she said, laughing until tears came. Mrs. Lynde was right, of course. After a few days, Anne decided to return to school. Everyone was happy to see her again. Everyone except Gilbert Blythe, because Anne refused to speak or even look at him. Chapter 4. Anne's Mistakes. One day Marilla said, "I think I'll invite the new vicar, Mr. Allen, and his wife, to tea on Wednesday." "Oh, yes, please do," cried Anne excitedly. "Mrs. Allen is so young and pretty, and she has such a sweet smile. Can I make a cake for tea, Marilla? Please say yes." Marilla agreed, and for days Anne talked about her cake and what she would put in it. "I do hope it turns out well," she told Diana. "Sometimes I forget something important when I bake." "You made a lovely one last week," said Diana. "I'm sure this one will be fine too." On Wednesday afternoon, the tea party went very well at first. "These cakes are delicious, Miss Cuthbert," said Mrs. Allen with a smile. "You must have worked very hard." "Anne made this one especially for you," said Marilla proudly. "Oh, then I must try it," said Mrs. Allen, laughing. But after the first bite, her face suddenly changed. "Is something wrong?" asked Marilla. She took a piece herself and cried, "Oh, Anne, what have you put in this cake?" Anne's face turned red. "Isn't it all right?" she asked nervously. "All right? It's terrible. Don't eat any more, Mrs. Allen. Anne, you've used my medicine instead of milk." "Oh, no," cried Anne. "I didn't know. It was white and in a bottle, so I thought it was milk." She ran upstairs and threw herself on her bed, crying loudly. Later that evening, after the guests left, Marilla went up to Anne's room. "Oh, Marilla," sobbed Anne, "everyone in Avonlea will laugh at me for putting medicine in a cake." Marilla smiled and touched Anne's warm face. "No, they won't. Mrs. Allen wasn't angry. She said it was kind of you to make her a cake, and she's invited you to tea at her house." "Oh, then she forgives me. She really is nice," said Anne with relief. "Why do I always get into trouble, Marilla? Maybe I won't make any mistakes tomorrow." Marilla laughed softly. Oh, I think you'll find a way, Anne. You're very good at making mistakes. Spring came, with bright green leaves and early flowers. One April evening, Marilla came home late after visiting friends. The kitchen was empty, and there was no supper on the table. "Where's Anne?" she thought crossly. "I told her to make supper." She hurried upstairs and found Anne crying on her bed. "Don't look at me, Marilla," cried Anne. "I know I'm bad." "What's wrong?" asked Marilla. "Are you sick?" "Oh, Marilla, I want to die. Look at my hair." Marilla gasped. Anne's long red hair was now a terrible shade of dark green. "Oh, Anne, what have you done now?" "I bought a bottle of something from a man at the door. He said it would make my hair black." "Oh, how could I be so foolish? What can I do now?" They washed Anne's hair again and again, but it stayed green. For a week, Anne stayed home, seeing no one. Finally, Marilla said, "Anne will have to cut it all off. You can't go to school with green hair." Anne agreed sadly. "Maybe this will teach me not to think about being beautiful." Everyone was surprised when they saw Anne with short hair, but no one knew the secret. A few weeks later, soft red curls began to grow again, darker than before, and Anne was pleased. That summer, Anne and her friends often played in an old boat on the river. "Let's imagine I'm a prisoner escaping by boat," said Anne. "I'll hide under these coats, and the river will carry me down to the bridge. You must wait for me there." Her friends agreed, and soon the boat floated down the river. Anne lay quietly under the coats, pretending. But suddenly she felt water around her feet. It was coming in fast through a hole in the boat. Quickly she sat up and looked around. There was a low branch from a tree over the river. She jumped and caught it just in time. The boat drifted away and sank a few seconds later. The girls at the bridge saw the boat sink. "Oh no, Anne's drowned," they screamed, and ran to the village for help. Poor Anne hung onto the branch as long as she could. Her arms hurt, and she was sure she would fall soon. Suddenly, a voice shouted, "Anne Shirley!" It was Gilbert Blythe in his boat. "What are you doing there?" he cried, and quickly pulled her into his boat before she could answer. When they reached the bridge, Anne got out without looking at him. "Thank you for helping me," she said coldly. Gilbert jumped out too. "Anne," he said quickly, "I'm sorry I called you carrots. That was long ago. Your hair looks nice now. Can't we be friends?" For a moment, Anne wanted to say yes, but she remembered standing in front of the class while everyone laughed. "No," she said stiffly. "I'll never be your friend, Gilbert Blythe." "All right then," said Gilbert angrily. "I'll never ask again." Anne walked home with her head high, but her heart felt heavy and sad. When Marilla heard about the adventure, she sighed. "Why are you always in trouble, Anne?" "Well, I think I'm learning," said Anne. "After today, I won't use my imagination so much. Maybe Avonlea isn't the right place for it." "No, it isn't," said Marilla firmly. Later that evening, Matthew whispered to Anne, "Keep a little imagination, Anne. Not too much, but just a little." Chapter 5. The Dream of Queen's College. One day Marilla said, "Anne, your new teacher, Miss Stacy, talked to me yesterday. She thinks you should study for the Queen's College examinations in 2 years. If you pass, you can go to Queen's in Charlottetown for a year, and after that, you can become a teacher." "Oh, Marilla, "I'd love to be a teacher," said Anne. "But won't it cost too much money?" "That doesn't matter," said Marilla. "When Matthew and I adopted you 3 years ago, we promised to take care of you as best we could. Of course we'll pay for your studies." So every afternoon, Anne and some of her classmates stayed late at school. Miss Stacy helped them with special lessons for the examination. Diana didn't want to go to Queen's, so she went home early, but Gilbert stayed. He and Anne still never spoke. Everyone knew they were rivals, each trying to be first in the exam. Secretly, Anne felt sorry they weren't friends, but it seemed too late now. For the next 2 years, Anne worked very hard. She loved learning, and Miss Stacy was proud of her. But Anne didn't study all the time. She still spent evenings walking with Diana, visiting friends, or talking with Matthew about her dreams. One day, Mrs. Rachel Lynde said to Marilla, "Your Anne is quite grown up, now taller than you." "You're right, Rachel," said Marilla in surprise. "And such a good girl, too," said Mrs. Lynde. "She never gets into trouble now. I'm sure she helps you a lot with the housework." "Yes, I don't know what I'd do without her," said Marilla with a smile. "And look at her, those lovely gray eyes, and that red-brown hair. I must say, I thought you made a mistake adopting her, but now I see I was wrong. You've done wonderfully, Marilla." "Thank you, Rachel," said Marilla softly, feeling proud. That evening, Matthew came into the kitchen and found Marilla wiping her eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked in surprise. "You haven't cried in years." "I was just thinking about Anne," said Marilla. "I'll miss her when she goes away." "When she goes to Queen's, you mean?" "Yes, but she can come home on weekends," said Matthew. "I'll still miss her," said Marilla sadly. In June, the Avonlea students traveled to Charlottetown to take their examinations. "Oh, I do hope I've done well," Anne told Diana when she returned home. "The exams were so difficult, and I have to wait 3 whole weeks for the results. I'll die waiting." Anne wanted to do better than Gilbert, but more than that, she wanted to make Matthew and Marilla proud. 3 weeks later, Diana ran breathlessly into the Green Gables kitchen. "Anne, look, it's in Father's newspaper. You're first with Gilbert, out of all the students on the island. Isn't it wonderful?" Anne's hands trembled as she read her name at the top of the list of 200 students. She couldn't speak. "Well, now I knew it," said Matthew with a proud smile. "You've done very well, Anne," said Marilla, hiding her happiness. The next weeks were busy ones. Anne needed new dresses to take to Charlottetown. The night before she left, she put one on to show Matthew. Marilla looked at her and remembered the thin, lonely little girl who had arrived 5 years before. Tears came to her eyes. "Marilla, why are you crying?" asked Anne. "I was thinking of you as a child," said Marilla softly. "Now you're going away, and I'll be lonely without you." Anne put her hands on Marilla's face. "Oh, Marilla, nothing will change. I may be grown up now, but I'll always be your little Anne. I'll love you, Matthew, and Green Gables more every day." Marilla couldn't find the words to say what she felt. She just hugged Anne tightly. That year, Anne lived in Charlottetown and studied at Queen's College. She came home sometimes on weekends, but spent most of her time working hard. Many of her Avonlea friends were there too, and so was Gilbert Blythe. Anne often saw him walking with other girls. She thought they could have had good talks together, but she wouldn't be the first to speak. And he never tried either. When the final exams came in May, Anne studied harder than ever. I'd love to be first, she thought. Or maybe I could win the Avery Prize. The Avery Prize was given to the best English student, and the winner got a free place at Redmond College, one of the best in Canada. When the results were announced, Anne waited anxiously. She heard cheering outside. "It's Gilbert! He's first!" Her heart sank, but then came another shout. Anne Shirley has won the Avery Prize. Her friends ran to her, laughing and hugging her. Matthew and Marilla will be so proud, thought Anne happily. Now I can keep studying, and they won't have to pay for it. Chapter 6. Goodbye and New Beginnings. When Anne came back to Green Gables, she knew at once that something was wrong. Matthew looked much older and weaker than before. "What's the matter with him?" Anne asked. "He's had some heart trouble this year," said Marilla sadly. "He really isn't well, and I'm worried." "And you don't look well either, Marilla," said Anne gently. "You must rest now. I'll take care of the housework." Marilla smiled tiredly. "It's not the work, Anne. It's my head. It hurts behind my eyes. I'll have to see the doctor soon. But tell me, have you heard anything about the church bank?" "I heard it's having problems," said Anne. "All our money is there," said Marilla. "Matthew's been worried about it." The next morning, a letter came for Matthew. When he read it, his face turned grey. "What's wrong, Matthew?" cried Marilla. Anne came in from the garden with flowers and saw him too. Suddenly, Matthew fell to the floor. Anne dropped her flowers and ran to help Marilla. They tried everything, but it was too late. Matthew was dead. "It was his heart," said the doctor when he arrived. "Did he receive any bad news?" "The letter!" cried Anne. "Oh, Marilla, look, it says the church bank has closed. All our money is gone." Everyone in Avonlea was sad to hear that Matthew Cuthbert had died. For the first time, people talked about how kind and quiet he had always been. At first, Anne couldn't cry, but then she remembered his happy face when she told him she had won the Avery Prize. Suddenly, the tears came. Marilla put her arms around her, and they cried together. "Crying can't bring him back," whispered Marilla. "We'll have to learn to live without him." In the weeks that followed, Anne and Marilla worked hard on the farm and in the house. Their neighbors were kind and helped them, but the days were quiet and sad. One day Marilla said, "I'll miss you when you go to Redmond College, Anne. What are your friends from Avonlea planning to do?" "Some will teach and some will stay at Queen's," said Anne. "Gilbert's going to teach at the Avonlea School, isn't he?" Marilla asked. Anne didn't answer, so she continued. "He's very tall and handsome now, just like his father, John, when he was young. You know, John and I were good friends once." Anne looked up, curious. "What happened? Why didn't you stay friends?" "Well, we had an argument," said Marilla softly. "He asked me to be friends again, but I couldn't forgive him. Later I was sorry, but he never spoke to me again. It was all a long time ago." The next day, Marilla went to the doctor. When she came home, she looked very pale and tired. "What did the doctor say?" asked Anne anxiously. "He says I mustn't read or write, and I have to wear glasses," said Marilla. "If I'm not careful, I could go blind in 6 months." Anne was silent for a moment, then said firmly, "Then you must be careful, Marilla." "But think how terrible it would be to be blind, and all our money is gone. I can't work now. I suppose I'll have to sell Green Gables and live with Rachel Lynde," said Marilla, crying hard. That night, Anne sat in her room, thinking for a long time. Then she smiled to herself. She had made a decision. The next morning, she told Marilla her plan. "You mustn't sell Green Gables," she said. "It's our home. I'm not going to Redmond College. It's too far away. I'll teach at a village school nearby, and I can come home on weekends to help you. Mr. Barry will rent our fields and pay us for them, so we'll have money to live on. Everything will be fine." "Oh, Anne," said Marilla softly. "You're so good, but you should go to Redmond. You've worked hard for it." Anne smiled. "It doesn't matter. I'll study at home in the evenings and try to be a really good teacher. That's enough for me." Marilla tried not to cry. "You're a dear girl, Anne. Now we can keep Green Gables." A few days later, Mrs. Rachel Lynde came to visit. "Did you know," she said, "that Gilbert isn't going to be the Avonlea teacher anymore?" "Isn't he?" said Anne in surprise. "Why not?" "When he heard you wanted to stay near Marilla, he decided to teach in another village instead. That means you can have the Avonlea School." "Oh," said Anne softly. "That's very kind of him." Later that day, Anne met Gilbert by the river. She stopped and held out her hand. "Gilbert," she said shyly. "Thank you. Because of you, I can stay near Marilla. It's very good of you." Gilbert smiled and took her hand. "I'm glad to help. Are we friends now? Have you forgiven me for calling you Carrots?" Anne laughed. "I forgave you a long time ago." "I'm sure we'll be good friends, Anne," said Gilbert. "May I walk you home?" When Anne came into the kitchen, Marilla said, "You look very happy, Anne. Was that Gilbert with you just now?" "Yes," said Anne, blushing. "Gilbert and I have decided to be friends." She smiled brightly. "Oh, Marilla, I think life will be good for us now. We'll have to work hard, but we'll be happy. And we'll keep our dear Green Gables. What could be better than that?" Thank you for listening, The Girl from Green Gables. If you enjoyed Anne's adventures and her big imagination, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more classic stories rewritten in simple English. Let's keep reading and learning together, one story at a time.